let's get into it. Y'all ready? All right, let's get into it. Performing rights organizations. So when you guys are creating music, writing your music, pros these are the guys that are going to go and help you get your money for everything that's being written, from the composition to the lyrics and how it gets licensed out to different places. So, primary function is for them to collect those royalties and the public's performance of the works. So when we think about pros and kind of where their use is, these are the guys that they get with radio stations, concert halls, even restaurants, and they'll monitor the performances of your material, of the song that you've written, and help to go get you money for your song being played. So when we think about that, anytime you walk into a restaurant and you hear a song playing, pros are responsible for going and making sure that that venue is taking care of the writers. Annually, $2 billion. So that's a lot of money. That is all money that's being collected and being distributed to the writers for their works. Main source: performances and songs that's being played over the radio or over TV. So anytime you watch a show on Netflix and they've got a song playing, they're able to calculate how many people have watched that. Anytime that something gets played on the radio, they're able to see how many listeners were actually tuning into that and be able to collect that money from those organizations, those businesses, and filter it back to the writers. Another source, kind of what we touched on, is hotels, nightclubs, retail stores, anything that they're using to attract businesses. So when you're in there and you're hearing that elevator music, somebody is getting paid for that music being played. Anytime that you're on hold, somebody's getting paid for that, whoever wrote it. Right? The reason that we have pros is because as individuals, how are we really going to know? How are we going to track that? How are we going to trace that? So their job is to make that licensing process easier. They're responsible for licensing music, monitoring its use, and collecting and distributing the royalties. So they can also help to get your music licensed to some of those other different venues, as well as TV and radio stations. Now, they also aren't going to go and track every single one that's happening, right? So a lot of times what's going to end up happening is they'll use what they call a blanket license. And they'll do this on behalf of the writers and the publishers. That makes it a lot easier for them to be able to calculate what needs to be sent out to those writers and to those publishers. These are non-exclusive rights. These are non-exclusive licenses. So a songwriter doesn't necessarily have to belong to a pro to receive royalties. They can have a direct license with the user. So let's say, for instance, you find a business and they love your music and they want to play nothing but your music. You can license that to them, and you don't have to have a pro involved to be able to go get that money. You can just do it on your own. So they're not a necessity in every business sense for when your music's being licensed. Now, who can actually be a part of these performing rights organizations? Publishers, publishing companies, they can actually be a member of all at the same time. Authors and writers, you got to choose one. So when a publisher might be publishing a record, let's say it's got 3 or 4 different writers involved, those writers collectively might be affiliated with some of the different organizations, but the publisher has to be a member of all so that when that record is being licensed, that they can actually go and get those shares of royalties. You can switch, but anytime that you switch, any material that has been licensed or released while you've been with a different organization, it stays with that organization. They continue to collect those royalties for the works created during that time. It can be complicated, so try to just stick with one. The reason that we say to stick with one is usually when you're deciding to go with a performance rights organization, you want to make that a lifetime decision, right? If you talk to any entertainment lawyers that have really been involved in this stuff for a hot minute, they're going to tell you, hey, sign up, put your trust, put your faith in them. These guys are going to be able to take care of you, and just stick with it. Because anytime that we do try to move our catalog, it's very different. It's very difficult. They make their payments directly to the publishers and writers. This is different than typical publishing income, where a publisher will collect the money and pay it to the writer. All writers and publishers must submit a title registration for their PRO for each recorded and released song. So if you do have a publisher that is helping you push some of your material, who's taking your written song and is trying to connect it to an artist for them to perform or for them to record, do not assume that your publisher has submitted a title registration to the PRO. You can do that on your own. You need to make sure it's done. That is how they know where to shoot that money over to. You can actually do that on all of their websites. They attempt to determine how often a song is performed, and then they distribute the collected fees to writers and publishers accordingly. So when we kind of talked about that earlier, when they're doing that blanket license, they can do that, as well as if it is something that's on TV or on film, they can track how many times that material was used so that they can get you the royalties that you're owed. It's impossible to monitor every song every time it's played, so how do they keep track? Each one of them have a different way of calculating and distributing royalties. The royalties that they do distribute are distributed at the end of every quarter of the year, right? So those will come back into March, beginning of April, back into June, beginning of July, and that's how they'll do their payout for you. They'll look at how frequently it's played, and then they'll take the gross advertising income of the station that's played it, of the film that's played it, and they'll use that gross income to determine how much revenue has been created by that song. So we think about that like, we've got a new TV show. You wrote the intro, you wrote the theme. You're going to get paid more than the 5 seconds or 20 seconds of background music in the coffee shop on a scene of that TV series, right? It's weighted more. Everybody's going to be humming that. Everybody's going to know what that is. And then when they're taking that advertising revenue, it's also too like how big, you know, that TV show, that movie, that film, or even that record is doing. Something that's on at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, not that many people watching, not going to make that much. Something that is a blockbuster hit or the newest Netflix series craze, they're going to be getting a lot more off of it. So, just what I was kind of saying, time of day, use of music, is the background music, is the theme, and the duration of it. That's usually how they'll kind of calculate how much money should be paid out. So for us as a team here at Dolphin Street Sound, we have two that we really just kind of put all of our faith into. It's BMI and ASCAP. They also deal a lot more in live and recorded music. CSAC and GMR are the other two pros to make up the total of four. But ASCAP and BMI enforce live and recorded music licensing a lot more. So when, let's say somebody's doing a show and they're performing a song that you wrote, that venue owner will be responsible for paying out the license for that song to be played there. So BMI and ASCAP, they're really on top of keeping up to ticket sales on those venues, how many people they had come in the door, and making sure that that money is being paid out to the riders. Myth. The performers actually have to pay the fees publicly to perform the music by other songwriters. No, the venue owner actually has the responsibility to pay for this. So if I'm in a cover band and I go and perform a cover song, a lot of people are thinking, well, hey, I'm gonna have to turn around and pay to license that material so that my band can play it. That's not the case. The venue is responsible for that. The venue is they're the ones who are really making all the money from your band playing there and how well you do as a group. So keep that in mind. The venue owner has that responsibility. So how do we choose? There's the top 4. So a couple of different things to consider is how they're going to collect, how they're going to distribute the royalties, and which is actually going to assist more actively in promoting you as a songwriter, you as a producer, how they're going to help with your career. For us, the real reason that we put a lot of our faith in ASCAP and BMI is because those 2 organizations are really, really good at just connecting people. So if you're affiliated with them, they're really going to try to get your material out. ASCAP, they want to get everybody connected more than BMI does, and vice versa. For us, that's why we put a little bit more faith in those 2. ASCAP. So ASCAP stands for American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers. They are a not-for-profit organization. Anyone can join, and they have a minimum membership of a year. And they were formed in 1914, 110 years ago now. They actually collect a significantly more amount of money from music users for performing rights than any other organization in the world. They have the least amount of operating costs, and 88 cents of every dollar goes back into the member. That's the highest distribution ratio of any performance rights organization in the States. To keep everything clear, simple, all their books are completely open. They do a full financial disclosure, so you can go and see where your material, where your creation is helping them to make money. They disclose where they're helping to put that money back in your pocket. Here's a couple artists that I know are affiliated with ASCAP. A couple big ones. I'm sure everybody recognizes a few on there. All right, we'll get into BMI. Broadcast Music Incorporated. They are also a not-for-profit organization, and they have a 2-year minimum for writers, and they were formed in 1939, 25 years later. Here's what kind of separates BMI from ASCAP. They have 8.5 million musical works by 600,000 different songwriters and composers. They are the global leader in music rights management, and they advocate for your rights and licenses to your music for more than 650,000 businesses. BMI is way more connected with film and TV and games than any other performing rights organizations that's out there. A couple artists that work with them. Everybody know some of those guys? Yeah. Sound Exchange. You guys have probably heard about Sound Exchange. If you haven't, listen up. They are also a performing rights organization. Sound Exchange is the only pro that will collect money for webcasting. So when we think about our streams, Apple Music, Rhapsody, Spotify, Pandora, whatever it is that listeners like to listen to their music off of, Sound Exchange is responsible for collecting those licensing fees and getting it back to the writer. So the reason we bring this up is this day and age, everybody knows, hey, I'm done with my project. I want to put it on Apple Music. I want to put it on Spotify. You need to go get affiliated with Sound Exchange. You can be affiliated with them and BMI or ASCAP or CSAC or GMR, but they are the only ones that are going to go get your royalties for your streams. So you want to get paid for the thousands of streams that you had on Apple Music, you need to get with Sound Exchange. So takeaways. There's 3 US pros. GMR actually makes it the 4th one. They will get the writer and publisher's shares, and the title registration needs to happen with a pro. And we kind of went over the differences of the two, and we kind of peppered in a little bit about Sound Exchange. The reason that we bring up performing rights organizations to you guys is because when you're done creating this art that you did in the studio, you need to be registered with these guys before we get it and to start to distribute it. So we don't want to put it on Apple Music. We don't want to put it on Spotify until we're registered with a performing rights organization. Once it's out there, we want to have the codes and everything else that point back to you as a writer and as an author, putting money back into your account. It's really hard to do it. It's not impossible to do it after you get it on distribution platforms. But if you're set up with a pro before you actually distribute it out into the world, it's a heck of a lot easier to get that money heading back into your pocket. So I would suggest everybody to go and get affiliated with one, even if you aren't yet. But if you're in here and you're going to start creating music, start creating your art, you want to go ahead and start to build your network with those guys and just get set up with them. I'm getting into Josh's. So that's just my part of things. Where's Josh at? I'm going to kick it over to him, and we'll get him out of the room in here. But Josh is going to go over more of the distribution side of things and getting it onto all of these companies and kind of how that goes down. And then after Josh kind of runs through his stuff, I think we'll just kind of do a Q&A if there's any gaps so we can help you guys fill in. So I want to hand it over to Josh. Round of applause for Josh.
All right, what's up, y'all? How y'all doing? Public speaking is not really my thing, so we're just going to kind of go through this together. So yeah, I'm going to kind of piggyback off what Keelan was talking about, and I'm going to touch on musical works, sound recordings, and distribution. Musical works and sound recordings, it's really long and far-fetched, so we're going to kind of fly through that, but it all will make sense towards the end and why that is important. So, musical works and sound recordings. We'll talk about musical work copyrights, sound recording copyrights, and the limitations of their copyrights. I'm assuming most people in here are independent artists or affiliated with independent artists. How many of y'all actually know that there's more than one copyright that you have to do? Okay, cool. Yeah, so you do have to, there are multiple copyrights, and this is how you get paid for your music, is knowing about some of that stuff. Damn clicker. So there are 2 types of copyrights. There's musical works and sound recordings. So just kind of flying through this real quick. The musical works copyrights protects the underlying music and any accompanying lyrics, meaning if you wrote the song, you have to get a copyright as a songwriter. If you were the one playing guitar, drums, putting it all together, that's a separate copyright for the underlying music itself. Let's see. And like musical work, again, like if you wrote the music, whether on paper, you typed it in your iPhone, whatever, if it's tangible, then that is a copyrightable, I think that's the word, form. So it has to be in a tangible form. And this is just more just touching on musical works. And you have to go through the U.S. Copyright Office to submit. The fee went up. I want to say it's like $55 a copyright nowadays. Some people get the misconception of the poor man's copyright, No, you can't mail it to yourself. That's not a thing. It's non-existent. And I know some people that will try to copyright their entire album for $55. You can technically do that, but what that is just one composition of work. Meaning if you have 10 songs that you copywritten for $55 and I like song number 3 and I steal song number 3 and copyright song number 3, you technically can't fight that in court because your copyright is the composition of those 10 songs for one duration as opposed to that one particular thing. So even if you have like a really good lawyer, you're in the wrong. If I were to steal your music, I'm not going to steal your music, but if I were to steal your music and take number 3 on your album, there's really nothing you could do about it legally. Let's see here. This is more on the sound recording side of things. So going back a little bit, the musical works is the tangible written stuff or sheet music, things of that nature. The sound recording is the actual recording of it. Like when you guys leave the studio or record something and you bounce the WAV file. That is what the sound recording is. So you can have ownership of the tangible information, the song, the lyrics, and things of that nature, but you might not own the song. I'm sure a lot of y'all hear about record labels owning people's masters. This is what they own. They own the sound recordings of your music. They don't necessarily own the musical works. Sound recordings is phono records. What does that mean? Phono sound. Records is the recording. And again, I just kind of threw all these in there, so we're going to fly through some of these to get to the important stuff. Just more details about the sound recording. Cool. Limitation of sound recording copyrights. Legally, anyone can dispute a sound recording by imitation or simulation regardless of the fact that the right of reproduction and ability to make, I don't know how to say that word, derivatives has been granted. What that is basically saying is legally, if I copy your song, I really have the right to duplicate it. I just don't have the right to sell it, in a nutshell. Going to cover music, Keelan was mentioning playing in bars and things like that, or venues. If your band wanted to create like a cover CD or something of that nature, as long as you're just giving it away and you're not legally selling it, that's totally fine and you won't get sued. But as soon as you get $1 for one of those records, they could definitely come after you and get real ugly. It's just a little bit more on the limitations of the copyrights there. Since there are no performance royalties for sound recordings, the holder of the musical work copyright will receive airplay royalties, but not the label or the artist in the actual sound recording. So the sound recording itself generates its own royalties, and the musical works, the written compositions, generate their own set of royalties, aka publishing. And those are two separate ways that you guys, as indie artists, should get paid. So many independent artists, I didn't know this at first, but many of the independent artists don't know if your song plays once on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever, you're really entitled to get paid 3 times per that one stream. Because you're supposed to get paid from the sound recording, the musical works, and also through Sound Exchange for it playing on the interwebs. Streaming is subject to twice the licensing fees as terrestrial radio. What does that mean? So if you, like Keelan was mentioning with your Pro, if you had a song get licensed to play on a television show, a movie, something like that, the fee that the Pro would charge and pay you would be less if they were just advertising on terrestrial radio, which is FM, AM. If they were advertising on YouTube, things like that, Spotify ads, the fee for that licensing is doubled. To give you guys a good example, 2-3 days ago, I did a edit for a political commercial, and I was in charge of being the musical supervisor, which means I had to pick the music. So I picked some music off of this website and did not talk to them about licensing at all, because that's not my job. And so before they were about to turn it in, they asked me, do we need any licensing? And I was like, yes, you do. For the sound effects, no, because we have a subscription. But here's the contact information for the people who own this music. And for terrestrial radio, it was only a 30-second spot. The terrestrial radio fee was, I think, $2.95 for use of 3 months. But they turned around and said that they were going to digitally promote it as well. And that fee went from $2.95 to almost $700, which the owner of that music would get a very large percentage of that because they licensed their music to this political ad that no one's going to see. Here's a little demonstration who gets paid when the music is played or performed. If Aerosmith does a song, no royalties to the artist for airplay. In the Loose cover version, whoever that is, no royalties to the cover artist for airplay. The original publisher and songwriter, that's who would get the royalties collected for songs playing on terrestrial radio. And I'm sure y'all are familiar with the little C with the circle in it. I'm sure most of y'all have distributed music on Apple Music through TuneCore, DistroKid, things of that nature. If you look closely at the very bottom of the title of the song, you'll probably see a little P there, which that's granting you the copyright of owning the phonorecord, which is the recording of the music. Now, if it was a record label, they would be the ones who own this if that's the deal that you sign. But being independent, you own your masters. You're the copyright owner. So if you look closely at your songs on the interwebs, you should see a little P down there. And this is just a little rundown on what to know. So limitations, sound exchange, that's a big one. We're going to go over that in just a second. And all this will make sense here in a little bit. But DSPs, I'm sure all of y'all are familiar with DSPs. They're digital service providers. This is your Spotify's, your Amazon Music's, Apple, Xbox Music, Tidal, things of that nature. Metadata. This is the information that's embedded into the song. When you guys distribute yourselves through like a TuneCore, DistroKid, things of that nature, they will generate an ISRC code and a UPC code, which is like the barcode for your music. You can also, like back in the day, you can still do it, but you would have to buy your UPC codes. And the engineers or the mastering engineer would embed that data into the audio file. So when it plays on the radio and it plays on television, these codes are how it's tracked by your pros. So it's very important that the metadata is embedded in it. Like I said, now with TuneCore and things like that, they give you the codes automatically. So that's very helpful. No metadata means no royalties. Also metadata, this isn't mentioned here, but the metadata is also like who works on the record. Like if you give yourself credit, like Joe Blow is the songwriter and Tim is the guitar player and whatever, even the engineers. Try to do as much as you can, especially being independent, to put all that information on there. For instance, like if someone's song went gold or platinum, to get a plaque from the RIAA, you need to have proof that you have credit on that record. So if you did a feature with somebody and the song goes quadruple platinum, whatever it is, if your name is not in the metadata and you're not credited on that record, it's extremely, extremely difficult to prove that you actually were on that song, even if you're like the artist, like featured, and you're like, hey, that's me. And they're like, well, your name's not on here, so we're not giving you anything. So as an indie artist, and it happens so much, credits are huge. It doesn't mean any money. So if you throw like a featured artist or an engineer or a producer in the metadata, you're not giving them money. You're just literally slapping their name on it and giving them credit for their work, which goes a very, very long way. Not going to touch on that. Cool. So this little tree here is kind of gives a pretty dumbed down, summed up way on how the royalties work. So your song plays on Spotify, Apple, Tidal, whatever. You generate two forms of royalties: your master royalties and your publishing royalties. Being that most indie artists own their own masters, I'm sure, like I said, most of y'all use CD Baby, TuneCore, whatever. If you go to your account every month, there's like a dollar amount at the top that you can withdraw into your account. That is the money from your master royalties. Meaning, if you're not signed up with a pro and you haven't registered your songwriting or your composition, if you make the instrumentals or play the music, you're only getting paid from this side here. You're not getting paid from the right side. So you're leaving a lot of money on the table. And ASCAP, BMI, CSAC aren't going to hunt you down to be like, hey, man, we owe you money. They're not going to do that. I believe ASCAP does back pay. BMI does not. So if you have a record that did 1 million streams and then you sign up for your pro, they're not going to pay you for that 1 million streams. They're just going to pay you for moving forward. Where does that money go? I have no idea. Probably Taylor Swift. So this is just kind of a rundown, which is true. Actually, side note, Spotify in January of this year, if you do not generate 1,000 streams annually for your song, Spotify will not pay you. It sounds stupid, but at the same time, it doesn't sound stupid because last year, I think, my numbers are off, but I think it was around $380 million went unclaimed from Spotify. And 85% of that was from independent artists not claiming their music or claiming their funds for their music. So Spotify did that so they can pay the artists that are actually generating streams. And I mean, 1,000 plays in an entire year really isn't that much if you think about it, But no, if you don't generate at least 1,000 streams just from Spotify, they won't pay you your royalties. They'll give it to somebody else, which is kind of crappy. So music distributor types, they got the majors, the major indies, the subs, some of the other stuff that's kind of that you won't really see nowadays, but the big ones are like the majors and the indies. Some majors are, I'm sure y'all have heard of these: Sony Music, Warner, and Universal. Those are the big three in the music industry. Like a Cash Money Records, they are an umbrella label under Universal Music Group. Universal Music Group is the head honcho that controls a lot of that stuff. And these are just some basic notes, like cool. Digital aggregators. These are self-distribution companies. They catalog, prepare metadata, and distribute your music to hundreds of DSPs for a flat fee or commission. Again, everybody's familiar with the CD Baby, the United Masters. What this is saying is you sign up for TuneCore, it's $50 a year. That's all that TuneCore gets from you is the $50 a year. So anything that you generate, they're not getting a cut of it. So you pay them their fee, they put it on the stores, and collect your money for your master royalties as it comes in. And if you don't pay them, I don't know if this has happened to anybody, but they will take your music down. Which is the kicker, because if you re-upload that music, they generate a new UPC code, an ISRC code. But things like TuneCore, which you can do even if your music is taken down, if you want to re-upload it, just go back to those songs and copy those codes, because they're already paid for, and then post them on the re-upload. That will help with things like your stream count. So like if you do have a song that goes gold, which is a single is 150 million streams. If you had 100 million streams and then the song gets taken down and then you re-upload it and then you do 50 million streams, you didn't go gold because it's technically a new product per se. And these are just some of them. CD, like I've been saying, CD Baby, TuneCore, DistroKid, United Masters. I didn't know Reverb Nation actually pays people or people use that anymore. And this is just kind of an example of how much you get paid per stream. So Spotify, as you can see, is 3/100th of a cent. So they don't even give you a penny every time that your creation is played on Spotify. So you spend hours and hours writing and creating, you get it mixed, mastered, you go do your shows, you promote the hell out of yourself, and you get paid 3/100th of a cent per play. Apple Music is a little bit higher. It's 6/100th of a cent. I'm just going to kind of run through these. Amazon Music is 1/4 of a cent. YouTube Music, which is separate from YouTube. YouTube Music is the music platform for YouTube, so people can actually subscribe to YouTube Music and use it as like an Apple Music, Spotify, things like that. I don't think I have it up here, but like the streaming for YouTube is real, like the videos is really, really low. Pandora. Pandora doesn't pay a damn thing. Tidal, they pay 1/800th of a cent, which has gone down since Jay-Z sold. Right before Jay-Z sold, Tidal was one of the top ones. It still is, but they were paying about a cent per play. And then we have our good friends Napster, which you wouldn't think no one uses Napster, but people do use Napster. And Napster actually pays you almost 2 cents per play, which is ironic because they pirated music back in the 90s. And now they pay you, yeah, they're just making up for it. Just to kind of give you guys an idea, this plays by itself, so it's going to play kind of quick. Cool, y'all can't see it, but I'll go ahead and read it to y'all. So for 1 million streams on Spotify, Spotify will pay you $4,000 for 1 million streams. That's not a lot of money for streaming. Apple Music, you'll make about $5,000. Tidal, you'll make about 8 to 10. Let's see. Pandora, you'll make like $1,300 for 1 million streams, which is crazy. Napster's not on here, but if I remember right, it was around $16,000 and some change if you had 1 million streams on Napster, which does sound like a lot of money. But if you compare that to actual record sales back in the day, I mean, I'm 36, not super old, but I still bought CDs when I was a kid. The CDs were like 10, 15, even $20 a pop. That's one sale compared to 1/100th of a cent for your creation, which is really crappy, you know. So yeah, a lot of musicians do make the bulk of their money gigging, playing shows, because a lot of them keep that money unless they are on a 360 deal. And that's why a lot of record labels don't have the budgets anymore to develop artists, because if they own your masters and you do 1 million streams, that record label only got $4,000. What's $4,000 to Universal Music Group? That's lunch money, you know? So yeah, you pretty much have to be like this polished product that they can take and push and sell so they can make as much money as they can off of you. And hopefully they don't take any of your touring or gigging money so you can actually make a living doing music. Not saying that to discourage anybody, but that's just the world that we live in, you know. Cool. I think, yeah, that's the end of it. That's the end of my presentation. I think we're about to do a Q&A. Oh, thank y'all. Anybody have any questions? Oh, we have one up here real quick. Okay. What was the question? I'm sorry.
Which distributor do you prefer out of DistroKid, TuneCore, and everything? Like, is there any particular one that you would say is the most trustworthy? You know, either one that would work out easier, more convenient for indie artists? Personally, I like TuneCore. There are some features that CD Baby offer, like when you listen to a song on Spotify, how the video plays in the background. TuneCore doesn't allow that, which kind of sucks. But the other things that TuneCore offers, I personally like it because one of the big things is the analytics.
So TuneCore gives you a very detailed spreadsheet that you can download that tells you where your music's playing, where it's been sold, how much. And as an indie artist, I like that because that helps you where you should promote your music. So if you're going to do a spot like a Instagram ad for your album and you have 20 plays in Mobile, but you have 10,000 in Atmore, you know what I'm saying?
That was just my biggest issue because, you know, people would always tell me go with this one or go that one, but they also couldn't tell me why, you know what I'm saying?
They all pretty much do the same thing, but I think the analytic thing is huge because as you see, you don't make a lot of money from streaming. You know, so if you can see where your music's being played, you're more likely to hop online and find venues where you can book a show because you know people are listening to your music.
So the analytics side of it is more.
The analytics side of it, and the pay part of it too. Because United Masters won't let you withdraw your money unless you hit $100, which I think is stupid. But TuneCore, if you make $1, you can withdraw it. So.
So you guys said, or Keelan, you said you used ASCAP. Are you guys prefer ASCAP and BMI? Is there a reason you use both, or is there a reason to sign up for both? Because I'm signed up with BMI. Should I also sign up with ASCAP, or is that just a preference of yours?
So as a writer, you can only be affiliated with one performing rights organization. Now, let's say you started your own publishing company, you would need to be affiliated with all of them. So as a writer, you just kind of have to go with one. And that's because when they are tracking that so they know how to pay those royalties out, if you're affiliated with two of them and they're all both trying to go get money for you, who's in the right at that point? So when you are creating your membership, you as a writer can only be affiliated with one. And there's great things about all of them. So I know as far as like the membership fees, ASCAP I think is free to join, but BMI you actually have to pay a little bit more for it.
Other way around, BMI is free.
BMI is free, and then ASCAP, yeah.
Really? I'm not paying anything for my BMI membership currently.
You got grandfathered in.
Oh, word. Okay.
I will say that one cool thing about ASCAP is they do have like a member card that they offer that will actually help you with connecting other things just in the music world. It can help you get like discounts and things like that. So that's just kind of one little kicker as far as, you know, going with ASCAP versus BMI. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I know you said that BMI doesn't do back pay, but do they, say for instance you had something that came out, are they going to go after that for you and like sort of give you the rundown on what happened and go from there forward with it?
That's a good question. So usually the publishing company will report to the pro. Going back to ASCAP, BMI, like that's who, when your music gets played, that's who it gets reported to. And then they pay you for your songwriting and composition. If you don't have a publishing company, they'll just track what they can. And I've noticed that without a publishing company, a lot of streams and money gets left on the table. As an indie artist, going back to TuneCore, this is totally separate from like a subscription from TuneCore, but TuneCore does offer TuneCore publishing. It's a flat rate. I think it's $75, but they track your music like crazy and they'll pay you, but also the pro will pay you. So they track your music wherever it's getting played. I think it's like an 80-20 split. Like they take 20%, which is fair because they're doing all the legwork. Doing music myself, like I just had a BMI account back in the day, and the royalties were just like really crappy. And then I signed up with TuneCore Publishing, and it's just like, it went from like $20-$30 to a couple $100.
So you're with Tune. So you switched from BMI to TuneCore?
No, I still have my BMI account, but TuneCore Publishing
right,
started really tracking the plays, and they started reporting it to the pro, and then the pro started paying.
Okay.
So I actually did that before I went to audio school, and that's how I paid for gas and stuff while in college was from publishing. And if I wouldn't have signed up for that TuneCore publishing, college would have sucked a lot worse than it did.
I feel you, bro. Thank you, man.
In a sense, yeah. If you go through TuneCore Publishing, well, they're going to be your publishing company. You know, you can create your own publishing company, but then now you're responsible for tracking all of these plays. How are you going to do that? I honestly don't know. I have no idea how that's done. They just do it. So you can create your own publishing company, but you're probably just left in the dark if you don't really know what you're doing on that side of the thing.
So I'm curious about the checks and balances that you would take throughout the co-writing process, just the creative process, copywriting the song to ensure that it's fair for everyone involved. How would you go about that, or what's your advice for that, for co-writers? You know, people who aren't necessarily solo artists, but bandmates.
Before we get into that, I just want to add, doing the title registration with the pro. That's why that's so important, is so that they know where that money needs to go to. So don't just kind of bet on if you are affiliated with a publishing company for them to do that. For your question, the kind of industry standard way is whoever's in the room and they contribute needs to get a fair share of that. So Nashville really kind of set that as a standard, probably early 30s, 40s. And that's really been kind of the industry standard for majority of the deals are put together. Now you do have some guys who, they can kind of create their own deal. And if you're with a group of writers, however you guys decide to split that body of work is really up to you. But when we see like writing groups happening, majority of the time, if I've got 4 people in a room and they've all contributed to that, and let's say this one person only contributed 1 line, they still get 25% of the cut. Now, a way that we track that is what we do called split sheets. A split sheet needs to be submitted with that title registration. That split sheet shows that when that ISRC code pings, hey, this thing got streamed, they're able to know where that money that's being paid out needs to go. So anytime you are creating music and you got multiple writers involved, the very first thing that you guys should be doing is filling out a split sheet. If we have bands that come in the studio and they have not kind of put that together, we kind of nudge them, hey, you guys go ahead and like fill that out. Go ahead and put that on the table. Let's go ahead and like air that out with everybody. Because the last thing you want to do is for, let's say, a guitar player who's involved and he thinks that the melody that he wrote really creates that catchy part of the song. This song now is going to be a hit because a label picks it up and they're about to put some money and market it. And these guys haven't made that split sheet going into that deal. It's going to be really hard for those guys as they start kind of fighting. And for us, when we do see collectives coming in here to create something, that's usually what happens is they come in, they start to create it, and it really is something special. That guitar player might not have really thought that that was a big deal, but now when that song is being brought to life, it's like, oh man, that melody that I made is that's the catchy part, that's what's going to make that. So for us, when we do have groups that come in and they don't have a split sheet put together, we always kind of push them to do that. But that's really the main way to track the percentage, the payout that needs to go to each writer. A lot of music that is put out now these days, it might be a producer or an instrumentalist. Let's say I'm a kid, I've cooked up all the instrumentation on my laptop, and then this guy comes in, he's the lyricist, right? He actually wrote the song that is telling that story. Majority of the times that's going to be a 50-50 thing. Only when you start getting into like back end deals and negotiations can people kind of decide to do those things differently. And as a writer, you have the freedom to give away part of your publishing if you would like to. So let's say if I'm an instrumentalist and I create something, but this guy can get it with this lyricist. Well, I might give him 5% or 10% on the back end for him to go push that material for me. And that's solely up to you and whoever you're, doing that business with. So
I guess going off of that, at what point in the creative process would you need to start thinking about the copyright, like at what point in the creative, obviously you want to discuss those things with the people that you're writing going into it, but at what point in the songwriting process do you need to start submitting your copyrights and getting all of that together?
When you feel like all the pieces are there, everything that's going to be like coming into play to bring that to life. Now, let's say you're a lyricist and then you get somebody that's kind of got, let's say it's a guitar player and they somewhat got this melody or counter melody kind of put together. But you're still going to put drums on it. You're still going to put bass on it. You're still going to add some synth, all of those things. You really don't have all the pieces in play yet. So as far as like submitting the copyright, if you're going to bring somebody else that's contributing to that, they might be at a disadvantage when it does go to publishing. Yep, for sure. One more with that. Yep.
The way I understood, like registering your copyright with the Library of Congress, you're supposed to do that prior to publishing. Is that correct?
Yes, for the body, for the lyrics, for the composition.
My question is,
Yep.
what, with digital and stuff, what all is considered publishing? If you shared it on YouTube, is that considered publishing? Do you want to do your copyright prior to releasing it in any streaming fashion, any kind of?
For sure.
But like, say you're just on Facebook and you've got a live version of it. Do you not want to do that before would that be considered publishing?
Well, no, the copyright part of it, if you released a song and it's not copywritten, and I like your song and I take number 3, you legally can't do anything to me. Because if I turn around and take your music and copyright it, I'm the owner of that musical work.
So basically, before you get out there and start playing it and sharing it,
it would be wise.
It would be wise
for sure.
to go ahead and register.
Just to protect yourself, for sure. And going back on the song splits for the band members and things of that nature. I know on BMI, there's a 200% that you have to fill out, 100% for composition, 100% for songwriters. Meaning if you have 6 band members, they need to split up if they help make the music, need to split up that 100% of the composition. And if it's just you as a songwriter, you're entitled to 100% of that songwriting. And again, the copyright stuff, with the split sheets, you only need 1 copyright per single upload. But that's where the split sheet comes into play. Like knowing that, like if you wrote 25% of the song, you don't need to copyright 25% and so on and so forth. You just need to copyright the entire body of work, and those split sheets tell you who owns what, and that's how you get paid from things like that. But yeah, to answer your question, I would definitely get things protected. It can get expensive, just to protect yourself, because you never know. You might be low on that $55 to do it, and next thing you know, you hear it on the radio, and there's nothing you can do about it. Which would really suck.
I have a buddy that I try to get him. You need to copyright it. You need to copyright. He will not. He's just rocking on with it. But
if one of his songs takes off and makes
right
$10 million, he gets 0 of that.
Or you get song number 3 and
exactly. And legally, there's nothing you will lose in court if you try to fight that. So, copyright your music.
Yes.
When you're copywriting your songs, say you got quite a few of them, how long does that copyright stand? Is that forever? Is it a year, a couple years?
How long is the copy? Is it 90-something years? I forget exactly off the top of my head. It's a very long. You'll be dead before your copyright is over with. Before it enters the public domain, like Mickey Mouse.
Okay.
The original Mickey Mouse,
Right.
I think this year entered the public domain. So if you take not the one that's like on the video games and stuff, but the original black and white Mickey Mouse, you can legally take that and do whatever you want with it because the copyright is expired.
Okay, so if there's a situation where, like, I got these two gentlemen here, they both write. One sings, one raps. They do their own stuff. But we have no label. And somebody says, hey, Sprite wants to use your actual song or your actual instrumental in their background. But we don't have a label.
Well, you don't need a label. So in that sense, you would be, since you own the music, you are the one determining what you would charge for licensing that music. So if Sprite wants to use it, you tell Sprite, hey, I want $10,000. And they'll either give it to you or counter, whatever. The price is up to you.
Right.
Since you own the music, for licensing, it's totally up to you.
Now, the fee is $55 for each song?
For the copyright,
For the copyright. And that goes to?
The U.S. Copyright Office.
Okay. And that's located where? Washington?
Yeah, Washington.
Is that Washington?
Yeah.
Okay. 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 All right. Thank you.
This may be a little different, but in today's world, you mentioned earlier, especially Keelan, today's world is people are making YouTube, not YouTube music. And that's because YouTube is paying more money than YouTube music. For if you get up to so many views, you got so many subscribers, you're paid off of that as opposed to being your song or what have you. And you're starting to see people like Rashad, people who have made it that way as opposed to now he's coming out with his own stuff. So can you mentioned Soundscape?
Sound Exchange.
Is that what you would use if you're doing new music, but you're putting it on YouTube?
Yeah, so for any digital streaming platform, Sound Exchange is going to be the one that is going to get that money for you. That's that performing rights organization that is responsible for figuring out the amount of money that you should be paid on any of the streams. Now, one of the reasons that YouTube versus YouTube Music is going to be able to give you more money is because, think about it, if you guys are sitting there and you're watching a video on YouTube, you're more likely when that ad comes up to go and spend money on that ad or to click that link and to go check out this product that's being advertised to you, versus if you're just listening to music and you hear an ad for something, are you going to stop what you're doing right then and there and go check that out? So it's a lot less expensive for companies who want to advertise for them to advertise on just strictly the audio airplay, versus if I want to advertise and put a video up that you have to watch or watch the first 5 or 10 seconds of it before you watch your YouTube video, it's going to cost me as an advertising agency more money, more dollars spent to put that in front of you before you're watching that video. So if you have video content that does have music, it's going to be more money back to the artist, back to the writers than if it's just being played.
Copywriting that you're doing your gig, somebody streams it, records it, put it out on YouTube. Does that still go back to a DMI, or is that something now that's responsible?
Now, let's say, for instance, somebody, let's say you're a group and you're performing something, and you've got 20 people that record that and they all go put that up on YouTube. Well, if they've created an account where they're in the situation to gain funds from that content, essentially they owe you, right? So if you're affiliated with a publishing company or a label, or you got some people that's going to go after that for you, they're going to go sue and get that money for whoever was using that content to help promote their YouTube channel and be able to give that back to the artists and back to the songwriters.
I think, but if you're on your license or if you're signed up with Soundscape, they're responsible to the company who owns that?
Well, something like that is not going to have that RSRC code attached to it, right? So that's just going to be, let's say you're performing it live, that's not going to have that ISRC code that Sound Exchange would be looking for to be able to go get that money. Yeah. So it's actually a big thing with the labels right now, is because a lot of people are doing cover songs and they'll upload it on YouTube. It might go viral to a certain extent, we've seen in the last couple of years, the labels kind of tiptoe. Do we want to go sue that person to be able to get the money for the writer and for the artist? Or this song that's 10, 15 years old that just had a cover of it, do we just not want to do anything because now after people are watching this viral video, are they going to now go consume the master and bring that back to life? So it's kind of like this weird thing that we're in the middle of with that.
And also, like, if you were performing and someone recorded you, kind of what you're saying, and then it uploaded to YouTube, it's kind of like Facebook. If y'all notice, if y'all like make a video on Facebook and there's music in the background, they'll either mute your video or they'll just completely take it down. So if it's registered correctly and it like gets flagged, like they'll yank it down off the internet before any of that really happens.
How y'all doing?
What's up?
My guys. I'm a familiar customer here. Got a question. So as an independent artist with the copyright theme, that is a big issue I'm hearing. Is it smarter if you're a person like me, or I can speak for other artists, sometimes it's hard to just drop one song, right? Like, if you have a body of work, would you say it's smarter to do a copyright, like, bro, just focus on singles as an indie artist and just do that till you build up a portfolio, or till you build up that, how can I say, that following, versus just doing like if you were under a label or something, dropping a big body of work? What would be your advice to that?
You're asking, like, would you copyright a full body of work, or like copyright single by single by single?
Right, because you were saying that it's
like 55.
If you do a body of work, then it's just copywritten for that. Not
if
song.
you upload it as a collective, like straight through, for sure.
Right.
For the copywriting side, I would definitely want to protect that. So as soon as like the song's done, I know a lot of hip hop, it's popular in hip hop for lyrics not to be written on paper. It's kind of a bar for bar thing. Like once that song is done, before you put it on iTunes, like copyright it, if that makes sense.
Right.
That way, that just protects you from your music getting stolen. And then it gives you the legal right of ownership for that body of work. So it really all depends. I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing a full body, like a 10-song album, if that's what you're asking. That's really up to you. I think away from the copyrights from a marketing standpoint, like I would probably do single after single until you either have a body of work to re-release. And when you do, say you come out with 10 singles and you put all that on an album, you need to take those same ISRC codes and UPC codes and put them in on the album. So when it plays on that album, it still counts as the same product being sold, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yep.
Okay.
Instead of letting like TuneCore, like if you upload all 10 of them, they're going to generate ISRC codes individually for those songs. So now you have the same song out twice under a different coding, which is what you don't want to do,
Makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, it still needs to be copyrighted so no one steals it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Piggybacking off of what they said, so I know it can get expensive between the performance art version and the sound recording. If you had to choose one for the time being until you can get everything ultimately copywritten, which one would you choose to kind of, I guess, would be the best protection in the meantime, between time?
What you mean?
So like, okay, I got an EP I just dropped. I got the EP handled, but like you said, song 3. So if I want to copyright song 3, would I make sure I get the lyrics and stuff handled first, or the sound recording? Which one you think would be more protection in the time being until I can afford everything per se?
The songwriting, the
That's
lyrics. For sure.
Cool. I just wanted to ask that.
So another piggyback. Have things sped up or expedited as far as the copywriting process is concerned? Like, say for instance, you got something, and you somebody's like, oh man, we need to do this in the studio, we need to get this done, and then you realize, oh snap, I didn't even copyright. I'm just saying, but like, what's the time frame nowadays versus back in the day of copywriting? Because I know it used to be a while, and like nowadays everybody's just like on it, dropping stuff. And do you need to wait a certain amount of time, or is it like?
I don't know what it was like back in the day.
It was back in the day. It was a long time.
Because back in the day, you used to have to like make the record, put it on a disc, and mail it to the copyright office, which you can do still, but we have the internet, so just upload a WAV version of it. So that took time because they would have to receive it, process it, and all that jazz. As for time frame, I would do it as soon as possible because, like, as the world we live in with viral videos and things like that, like you could upload a song and you take off tomorrow, and if you don't own that music, it's you're kind of SOL. You know what I'm saying? If somebody wanted to come and take your stuff, so I would probably put that, like, make an effort to do that, like when you release music.
I think there was, if I read correctly, one point I was involved in some legal battles at one time with some music. So I remember that just because it was copywritten and it was in the process of being, finalized, whatever you want to call it, it was protected. You know what I mean? So I think that's
right.
Okay, cool.
All right, thank you. Testing. Hey, okay, thank you. So all of your information, it's been so pivotal. Do you have a place on your site that we can go and do, like, look for Q&As and some go-tos and some links and, all that good stuff? Because tonight was very needed. And I'm very much sure that, after this, it's going to be more to come. So where can we find that?
We just rebuilt our website. I don't think we have a FAQ section yet.
Okay.
But we do have a series of YouTube videos that we've been creating that we are going to post on the site. Some of it's dealing with engineering, some of it this stuff. Okay. And we are going to have a FAQ section on there to kind of.
Awesome.
And if when in doubt, just holler at us.
Yeah, amazing. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, hey, if anybody does have any other questions, we'd love to hang out and for you guys to just kind of hang out and just kind of network here for a little bit. I feel you. And then, hey. And then what we're gonna do too with the keynote that we've put together, if we do have all of y'all's email, if y'all have registered on the RSVP form, I'm gonna shoot that out to everybody just so everybody does have this information and feel that. And then we're gonna make this video and get that posted too. So appreciate you guys coming and hanging out. And y'all just kind of network for a little bit. Cue some music. Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all.